Welcome to the Foster in Palo Alto, California. We are a unique museum dedicated to sharing the watercolor journeys of artist-explorer Tony Foster. We hope to inspire reflection, discussion, and education about art, wilderness, and the natural world. With this series of 4 videos, we invite you on a tour of the museum with the artist-explorer himself. Please join Tony on the first of the series, Lobby Orientation with Artist History and Artist Studio.
So when people first arrive at the Foster Art and Wilderness Foundation, 940 Commercial Street, the first thing they're confronted by is this enormous black and white photograph of the artist himself, me, but a younger version, at a place called Kaieteur Falls in Guyana. I was looking for a waterfall for my exhibition Watermarks, and I wanted one that wasn't a tourist attraction. So to find a fantastic waterfall that wasn't a tourist attraction is not an easy thing, because most big waterfalls are tourist attractions. Think of Niagara Falls, for example. But I didn't want that. I wanted one that was remote, very, very rarely visited, and therefore, by its nature, had to be difficult to get to. And that Kaieteur Falls absolutely fitted the bill. So here you see me with my setup. You can see I've got my aluminium tube there, my day pack, my stool, my drawing board perched on my knee, and I'm doing a study of looking upriver. So I guess what's impressive about it is the fact that that rock there looks like it's about to fall into the waterfall, but I guess it's been there a long time and it could certainly bear my weight. At least it did for the time I was there. And so that's what people first see, but I suppose it's making the point very forcefully that in fact the work is done on site and not done from photographs when I get home. I never use photographs, and I try and resolve the work on site, which means that generally it's about 2/3 finished on site and then finished off entirely in my studio in Cornwall. So that's how the process works, really. So we're going to walk around now and see a little bit about the equipment and I guess, a timeline of my life so far. So this is the section that people browse about my equipment. I mean, it's pretty laughable, really, because you've never seen such a pile of junk in your life, but this is in fact what I use and have used for many years. Although in this case, a pair of boots. Well, obviously I'm a hiker, so I wear boots, an old compass, and a thermometer. Because it's always nice to know just how hot you are, and if you feel you're frying, then it's nice to have the thermometer confirm that by saying it's 110 degrees. Most important of all, of course, my mug with my tea bag. If it wasn't for tea every 2 hours, I would not have survived this long. And so in order to have that, of course, you need a water bottle and you need a stove. And this is an MSR Whisperlight, which is now rather an old-fashioned stove. I used it for many, many years, but I've now graduated to the new MSR stove, which boils water a darn sight quicker. And so that really is the basic equipment and most necessary of all the things that I ever take with me. And then over here is perhaps of more interest to people who are interested in art, is my painting equipment, but it's equally rudimentary, really. Nothing very special about it. The only special thing, I suppose I would say, is the paint box, which is the paint box I always use. It's called a Winsor & Newton Bijou No. 2, and since the foundation took that one off me, I've got another one. It's a little tin box with 21 colours in it, which I adapted for my own use because the standard Bijou No. 2 box has only got the top 2 rows of colour, which will be about, let's think, 12 colours, and I managed to squeeze 21 colours into it. And that's pretty much all I need to do any painting, whether it's big or small. And I use the same box in the studio and never transfer to any other kind of box. And I always smile to myself when I see painters who are just beginning to do watercolour, and they have a box the size of a piano keyboard, and I do everything I need, including 7-foot paintings with a box that size. Because of course, if you're carrying everything on your back, which I show here, you will resent every extra ounce you have to carry. So it's the obvious thing to do. My mixing pallet is the lid of a Tupperware box, ideal for the job. It's flexible, so it folds it, so it goes in your backpack without breaking. It doesn't weigh anything, and it costs nothing. If you lose it, you can just go and buy another one. In fact, my house is stacked with Tupperware boxes without lids. My wife's always complaining about it. And then my brushes. The brushes are very special. They're the most expensive article, really. A beautiful sable brush is an expensive thing, and some of the brushes might be as much as $75 or $100 each, even for quite a small sable brush. A sable is a very rare thing, and it's made out of the tip of the sable, the tail of a sable. So it's a pretty rare thing and that's why it's so expensive. Pencils, of course, clips to hold the watercolor paper onto the board. Here is the aluminium tube where I roll my paintings up when I'm carrying them and when they're finished. Rather battered because the whole thing, like me, has led a hard life. And but anyway, ideal really. It's been on the front of a kayak for many weeks. It's been hauled up and down mountains. It's been bounced around on the floor of a desert. It's been the rounds, and it's also, of course, been risked in the holds of many planes. I was very nervous until the thing actually finally turns up on the conveyor belt at the end of a flight, particularly when I've been working on paintings for several weeks or months, and they're all stored in that tube, and then they're given to the airline, and I always think, I wonder if it's ever going to come out again. But anyhow, and then here, people seem fascinated by the idea of the paintings I do underwater. I don't do the paintings underwater, I do the drawings underwater, coloured drawings, using Caran d'Ache crayons, which are a Swiss crayon, which is slightly water soluble, and a plastic drawing board like that one, with a little cord to tie it to my wrist so that when I go down, the thing doesn't float away. And so that's the equipment really for working underwater. So that all you need for a watercolor really is paint and water, and so that's my water pot. That little tube there is what I put my brushes in, sponges, pencils, erasers, clips. That's all you need. I also should point out my drawing board. This is a drawing board. Actually, this is an old version, but nonetheless, it's a drawing board of my own invention. You can see that's like me. That has had a hard life. It's pretty battered, but then it's been bashed about in all sorts of places. But it folds up small enough to actually stick it on the backpack. Rope it down with the straps. There's the tube, and this is actually a small version, 3 feet by 3 feet, routed out at the back to make it nice and light, made out of marine ply, so when it gets wet it won't fall apart. It's got holes around the edge so that it can be lashed down to the rocks and lashed to trees, or have guy lines with pegs which I hammer into the ground, tent pegs, to hold it in place, and it's propped up on my walking poles. So I use my walking poles, of course, for walking, or hiking, you would call it, and then that's dug into the ground. The board is propped up on it, and then I lash it down with cords and tent pegs so that it doesn't blow away when the wind blows, which it always does. So, but I do have these boards in different sizes. This one, as I say, is 3 feet by 3 feet, but you'll see that there's a provision there for another 3 feet to be stuck onto it. So sometimes I do painting 6 feet long using 2 boards like this put together. And I also have a much bigger version which goes to 4 feet, so it's another foot on top of here, by 7 feet. So that's the equipment. It's pretty rudimentary. The good thing about it is that if something gets destroyed, if the board gets destroyed or the aluminium tube falls down a cliff and gets bashed in, you can just get another one. They're not very expensive to do, and I guess the most expensive thing are the brushes and the paints. The rest of it is easily replaceable, really. Now we move into the story of Foster's life so far, I suppose we'd say. You can see from these photographs here that I used to be a teacher. Here I am looking stern at in a school in Leicester, in England. And then this is a photograph of me and my friend James Revilius on our first journey, first long, serious journey to make paintings. It was a 3.5-week journey through the Massif Central in France, following the route taken by Robert Louis Stevenson in his wonderful book, Travels with a Donkey. And so as we move through my career here I am working, I'm in Yosemite, then looks like I'm on the rim of the Grand Canyon here, then I go to the rainforest, then I go to deserts, this is rainforest again, then I'm in Idaho in the Rockies, then I'm up doing my series on volcanoes. I'm up in Bolivia painting in the snow, and painting a picture of a mountain, wonderful mountain called Sahama, and I think that painting is in the foundation here somewhere, isn't it? Then I'm still working on volcanoes here, but working in Hawaii on a molten lava coming through a lava tube. And now I'm in Greenland painting icebergs for my series called Watermarks. And now this is at the end of a journey, a 27-day journey down the Salmon River, in which I did a painting every day. And these are my traveling companions. And this is the first exhibition of that particular series of work. I laid them all out on a great long log, and all my friends got a chance to see them before they came to my studio. Here I'm doing a series called Searching for a Bigger Subject, where I compared Mount Everest and the Grand Canyon, the world's two greatest landscape icons. And then a series called Sacred Places, Sacred Places of the American Southwest. We're in Canyon de Chelly, and there's Foster sitting awkwardly on a horse, while everybody else looks perfectly at ease on their horses. We're about to set off into Canyon de Chelly to see if I can find a painting site. And this is a series here called Secret Sites in the Rockies in Idaho, where I asked all my mountain men friends to nominate their favourite place, which they would never tell anybody else about. And I made a whole series of paintings about them, and I permanently concealed exactly where the paintings were done. And in this one, this is a painting called a series called Exploring Beauty, and I'm painting Machapuchire up in the Himalayas, which was reckoned to be one of the world's most beautiful mountains. And here I'm working on the same series, working in Alaska on Denali, which was also nominated as one of the most beautiful places in the world. So really that sums up 40 years, I suppose, 40 years of painting, a few years of teaching, and a few years as a youth, all in one. So my entire life encompassed in 6 feet of graphics. But here, perhaps more tellingly, or more important to me anyway, the catalogues of my various exhibitions laid out in chronological order, which I think are a very graphic demonstration of all the things I've been engaged with and absorbed by and concentrated on for the last 38 years, I think, right up to my last 2 shows, both of which are on show here in full. Sacred Places of the American Southwest, which is on show in its entirety, and Exploring Beauty, which is also on exhibition, the entire exhibition, here on permanent exhibition, at least for a little while yet. So this is, I suppose, this is the part of this area which I'm most proud of, because it to me anyway, it says this is what I've spent my life doing. The marvelous thing about 940, the gallery here, is the way that everything has been arranged in such an extraordinarily imaginative way and so beautifully. An example of the kind of imaginative approach, I suppose, is this little reproduction of a corner of one of my paintings where in order to save time, I'm just trying to get down as much as I can at the time I've got. Sometimes I've got weeks to do a painting, sometimes I've only got a short time. And one of my habits really is to test out the colours that I'm about to use just on the corner of my painting or on the side of my paper. And sometimes that, in the end, forms a part of the painting itself, because the paintings are partly about the process of making them, partly about the process of actually living in the place and working. And so it gives the idea of the immediacy of the process, because here I am actually concentrating on this little area of work, a little area of painting, and here I am just gesturing really on the side to make sure I get exactly the right blue or exactly the right ochre or exactly the right yellow, whatever it is, just testing it every time, because of course watercolor is a very unforgiving medium. If you make mistakes, they're very hard to get round or to get rid of. Unlike oil paint, where you can scrape it off or you can paint over it or you can generally readjust, you can't do much of that with watercolor, and so you have to get it right first time, and so I always test the colors before I apply them. And so that's that, and here there's one little painting from the Grand Canyon. It's called Looking North from Between Yaqui Point and Shoshone Point, 2008, reworked in 2012, it said. And really, I suppose it's here because it demonstrates in one little painting exactly what I've been up to, which is, first of all, painting these wonderful untouched parts of the world, the Grand Canyon being a wonderful example. You might think that because 3 million people a year go to the Grand Canyon, it would hardly seem to be untouched. But in fact, there are vast areas of the canyon which appear exactly like that, without any sense that anybody's really ever been there. And so I love the Grand Canyon, and I've been many, many times. And so it's a little painting just of something that caught my imagination and interested me. And so I sat and did that. And then I always apply to my work, because I'm trying to give people the sense of reality and to expand their idea of what this place is like. In this case, I've got a glass tube where I've ground up the rock, every layer that's in the Grand Canyon, because the canyon, of course, is wonderfully layered with all these different, that's what's so marvelous about it, these lovely, lovely layers of rock. And so we start with the Kaibab limestone at the top, and as we go down through all the different layers of the canyon until we get to the Zoroaster granite at the bottom. And so in a way, that's kind of summing up the Grand Canyon in a little glass tube, which I think is a kind of magic idea, really. And I always have maps to show exactly where the painting was done, so that people could, if they wanted to, if they were that daft, they could go and sit in the same spot and find the same thing. And then, in this case, a little arrowhead just to remind people that this place has a history before the national park. This place was actually inhabited by several tribes of Native Americans who lived perfectly happily there and managed to adapt the rugged grandeur of the Grand Canyon as the place, as their home. That's where they lived. And so that's to remind people that this place has a history of human interest and human habitation. And then a written diary. I always write a little diary in my paintings to explain how they were done, when they were done, who I was with, what happened to me, what insects bit me, what happened while I was doing them. So I write a little diary, and those are written at night in my tent in these little memo books. It's the last thing you want to do sometimes when you've been working hard all day and it's freezing cold and you're lying in your sleeping bag trying to warm up. The last thing you want to do is sit up in your sleeping bag and write your diary. But in fact, I always do it. You can see these are pretty mundane little books. But the good thing about them is they're absolutely weigh very little. And so I take these little books with me and write a diary every night, and that goes, an extract from the diary goes into each painting to explain how it was made. I mentioned my studio in Cornwall. I live in a little village called Tywardreath, on the south coast, which is a delightful place. Cornwall's a delightful county. I love it dearly, and I love to be home working on the things I've collected while I've been working hard in the back country somewhere in some difficult and windy and hot and dry place, or terribly wet place, or whatever it is. So it's nice to go home to my studio and sit quietly and just get on with the paintings and recall what it was I found so beautiful while I was working in the back country. And so this is a picture of my studio, or 3 pictures of my studio. Here you see all sorts of things I've collected, arrows from my friend Sir Paul in Guyana, a couple of finished paintings, all sorts of, this was given to me by the people in Honduras when I helped to pay for their school. They gave me this little plaque thanking me for helping to pay for the materials for the school they built. Another arrow, a necklace from Hawaii, somebody hung around my neck, all sorts of odd things that I just happen to pick up as I travel around. And my library, I've got a library of books about my fellow artists, all sorts of artists, and also a lot of travel literature and books about wild places, because I do quite a lot of research before I go to places. And here is a picture with a painting on the easel. That looks like a painting of Borneo, which is also on exhibition here at the foundation. And this is that's Machu Picchu there. That too is on exhibition here. And then on this wall here, you'll see I pin up. I collect all the, as you'll see if you come and see my paintings, I collect all sorts of things which I apply to the paintings. In a way, it's a kind of just a way of trying to prove that I was actually there. Like when I was a kid and went to Paris, I collected matchboxes or cigarette packets with French writing on, and bus tickets with French writing on, to prove I'd been to Paris. Well, in this case, I collect all sorts of bits and pieces from the back country. It might just be a pine cone, or it might be a twig, or it might be some stones, or it might be, who knows what it might be. It might be the bones of something or other. And I put them in bags and I label them so that I know exactly where they came from, the date I found them, and so on. And then I apply some of those to my painting. So I've got a great wall of things that I've collected as I've been on my travels, and each carefully labeled. And in a way, that too is a way of summing up a 38-year career working in the backcountry. And of course, we've got here a globe, because I'm always trying to think, where the heck is that place, and where is it in terms of its longitude and latitude, help you decide, whether it's going to be too hot or too cold. And a few other pictures from the studio here, bits and pieces of things, the little things from Tibet here, little Buddhist symbols from Tibet, fossilized shark's tooth, just an interesting stone here, some bits from the rainforest, the seed pods and things from the rainforest, and beautiful little periwinkle shells from my local beach. So I collect all sorts of things and just incorporate them into the work. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.